I think I've taken a lot of chances. I like to think they're calculated, maybe not always so much, but certainly starting out my career as a business owner, yeah, I mean, there's objectively there's a lot of potential challenges that come up, and I think at that point I took it quite well in my stride. Like the fear for me, the fear of failing, it wasn't necessarily there to start. It was more, maybe it was, but it was more overshadowed by the excitement of doing what I love, if I can put that. So there's always that little bit of fear in the background, but I think if you can balance that with why you're doing something or why you want to do it.
Hello and welcome to the Real Success Show. I'm your host, Candice Mama. If you've ever wondered how to scale a company into a multi-million-dollar global business, then our COO at the Real Success, Stephen Fourie's interview is the one you need to listen to. But before I jump into it, if you like this show and this content, be sure to what? Like, share, and subscribe. Now, without further hesitation, here's Stephen Fourie. Stephen Fourie, welcome to the Real Success Show.
Hey Candice, thanks very much for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, for those people who don't know who Stephen is, he is actually our COO at the Real Success. So I'm actually really excited to interview you, Stephen, because there's so much stuff I think our community can really glean from you. But before I jump into it, how do you describe yourself?
Thanks, Candice. Yeah, I think it's quite an interesting question. I get this. It's something I've challenged with for a while because I keep changing my roles, I guess. Although I've been now COO in this position for about a year and a half, and I think probably the best description is if you consider I'm probably the implementer and the probably chief problem solver. Um, if I think about the way I work, so I work really closely with Brian Walsh, our CEO, and he really leads the vision of the business. And my primary role is to take that vision and turn that into an operational business. So yeah, really the implementer, or if any of you follow EOS, it's what might be considered the integrator. So integrating the vision into an operational business and building the organizational structure around that. So that's really my role, is just to build out the business so that we can serve the vision of connecting a million people on learning journeys.
I love that. And you said chief problem solver, which is incredible. I love that definition. And when we're talking about problem solving, we're living in a very interesting time where so many people have to try and figure out the direction of their life now after the past 2 years. And so with problem solving, has that always come naturally to you, or is it a skill set you've developed over time?
Yeah, I think it's actually a bit of both. I mean, I feel like I feel like I've always been like had a sort of, I don't know, enticement or whatever you want to call it, to actually problem solving. I think it's always been an attractive situation for me to, I enjoy the challenge of getting stuck in and making stuff work and figuring out, and specifically around a business context. So how do we solving business problems? So I think it's been right from when I was in college, and probably even before then, sort of working on, side hustles and whatever, helping other business owners solve problems. I mean, back then it was, building a website, or how do we get customers to see us online, that kind of thing. Um, but it's definitely a skill set that I've developed over the years. I think there's so much that goes into it, and having a broad knowledge of the different areas of the business helps me do that. Coming from having run my own business and having kind of dabbled in all the different aspects of the business, gives me a broader sense of where things are and how to approach different problems. And I think so. It's really a bit of both. I think it's like I enjoy it. It's if I think about a couple of weeks ago, we had some challenges from a technical point of view, and I sort of just dive into solutions mode. And for me, it is a comfortable space to be in, to understand how do we take this problem and turn it into a solution. How do we solve for a positive business outcome. And but yeah, it's absolutely a skill you can develop, and I think everyone can work on that in one way or another. And that's why one of our things in the business is, in terms of our values, is being solution oriented. And how do we take, whenever we sort of say, okay, I've got this problem, like how do I, instead of presenting a problem, how do I present it with a potential solution, or how do I think through it and just foster that kind of thinking? Because it really is a skill that you can work on and develop. um, yeah, so really it's a bit of both, I think.
Yeah, and I love that. And speaking about problem solving and when things come into your path, there is a level of keeping a cool head under pressure, to make the best decisions moving forward. Is that something that you are capable of doing at this point? And if so, like, how do people out there start implementing it in their day to day?
Sure, Candace, that's a tough one. I think there's, I think it depends a lot on the context, right? So, um, I think that there's definitely a lot of situations where I don't get very stressed by problems often. Like it depends. Like I said, there's context. It always depends. There's different variety of challenges that come up, and they affect everyone differently. I do think I'm able to keep a relatively pragmatic approach to most things, and it's not always easy. But I think that it's always good to remind yourself around. Okay, so what's sometimes I think it's like, what is the worst that could happen? We haven't got there, cool, so it's fine. Okay, so let's solve for that. How do we find out what is the next action to take? Um, and I think that kind of, so often when you arise like a really big problem, or what's perceived as a really big issue, is just to break it down into what is the direction we're wanting to go. So, and I mean, you can apply this to both business or personal problems as well. I guess. I mean, to some degree, you can sort of take a step back and see like, what is the ideal outcome? Where do we want to be? Like, what are we trying to achieve? So it's really nice if you've got, from a business context, if you've got a very clear vision and very clear direction where you want to go in a year's time, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. Um, what you can do then is you can say, okay, we've got this issue. I've got a bunch of potential solutions, or I don't even have a solution. It's like, okay, just take a step back. What is it that we're really trying to achieve down the line? And then just by taking a moment, having a deep breath, and sort of approaching it from that angle, often you can start to think, okay, well, this is potentially the solution I want to get to, and you can start to figure out what is the next step. And I always like to say that if you're feeling a little bit of overwhelm in that space or anything like that, the best way to approach it is to put together a plan. Like, or what are the steps we need to do? Um, it's really hard to do sometimes. Like I said, it also depends on the context of the challenge. And sometimes you just need to lean on people around you who can support you to help with this, which I think is critical to do. And you can just figure out what is a step-by-step approach. And you might not know what all the steps are, and that's fine. If you can just figure out what is the next thing to do. And then I love the quote from Brian Tracy. I think I heard this when I was doing I think it was his 2-day MBA course a couple of years back. And it was, action brings clarity. So if you don't know what to do, you start with, what is the next thing? What is the first step I could take? And if you can just keep doing that, it'll bring that clarity, and it'll start to see, okay, where you start to find a solution as to where you're going. And sometimes that might be, okay, well, I shouldn't be doing this, I should be doing something else, and that's fine. But really, like, that action brings clarity. And I think if you can take a step back, take a breath, figure out where's your, a lot of people like your North Star, your guardian star, like, what is your vision? Where do you want to be? Whether that's business or personal, whatever the situation or the outcome, and then just take that next step. And I think that helps a lot to be able to deal with issues like that with a more level head, if I can call it that. Like I said, for me, it's a more pragmatic approach, and I think I'm fairly good at that. But it does take practice, and I think it's because I've always put myself out there, right, running my own business. Like, I have to solve it, right? So, you don't have another choice. You don't have anyone else to come save you. So you kind of got to step in and do it yourself. So yeah, you can put yourself in those situations, I think, and that helps build those skills.
Oh, I love that term. Action brings clarity. That is so powerful. And it's so true, right? Because even if you do sit there and you feel sorry for yourself, there's only so much you can do before you're like, okay, I probably need to get up now, which I love. And so just going back into your own personal journey. So you've built this multi-million dollar company now. And I really want to know, did you always know that being an entrepreneur was going to be your path, or did this develop as you were like working for someone, or how did the whole journey start unfolding for you?
I think there's been if I look back at what I've done over the years, like, I think that's it's kind of always been there, maybe. Through sort of like last couple of years of school and then into college, I was always running like a bit of a side hustle kind of thing, helping build some websites on the side and then building that into a bit of a business. And yeah, so for as long as I can remember, kind of thing, since school, like I've always had some sort of business on the side, and doing that while having my normal career or my normal job. And so I think it's probably always been there. Um, but it definitely, it took some specific steps where I decided at some point, like, all right, listen, I've kind of got this opportunity, and I really want to do things my own way. Um, After a few years working for a couple of different companies and realizing, like, I think maybe that was like really silly at the time, but like thinking, maybe I can do things a bit better or do things differently, at least not necessarily better, but different. And obviously there's another great quote I like is like, you don't know what you don't know. So I think at that point, I didn't even know that one yet. So it was always an interesting step to take that leap. But I think it's always kind of been there, wanting to be an entrepreneur, wanting to start and do things my way or my own way, and being able to the work that I do to be able that have that impact others in their businesses. I think so. If you've worked with John DeMartini, you might know about the values determination process and all of that. So my top value is really business success, and I think I've been able to drive that through helping others with their businesses, but it's always been quite central for me as well. So I think I've always wanted to build a successful business myself, and but by helping others to achieve the same result. And I did that through software development, helping people build projects that, help them create either a business out of their project, or help build some sort of project that helps them improve their businesses. And then now I've managed to find this space, which is a really interesting case where I'm literally living that, being able to help build a successful business and doing the same for lots of people all around the world.
Oh, that's incredible. And, on the journey of building and creating a successful and sustainable business, something that people don't talk about as much is the element of fear, right? There's a lot of people who don't even take the leap because they don't want to fail and they're scared of what the business is going to become. And then at each juncture in the business's growth, there's elements of fear. What is your relationship with fear like in this juncture of your business career?
I Candace, that's a really interesting one. I think that I always look at thinking like it hasn't really felt necessarily scary, which is, I love it. It's either brave or stupid. I'm not sure which. The I think I've taken a lot of chances. I like to think they're calculated, maybe not always so much, but certainly starting out my career as a business owner. Yeah, I mean, there's objectively there's a lot of potential challenges that come up, and I think at that point I took it quite well in my stride. Like the fear for me, the fear of failing, it wasn't necessarily there to start. It was more, maybe it was, but it was more overshadowed by the excitement of doing what I love, if I can put that. So there's always that little bit of fear in the background, but I think if you can balance that with why you're doing something or why you want to do it, that can be a driving factor, and you can use the fear, acknowledge it, understand it, and use that to limit your risk. So if you if you have this fear of failure, okay, cool, that's great, it's there. I acknowledge it. Like, okay, what can I do to prevent that? And so for me, there was, in some cases, certainly not enough of that. Like I've managed to get myself into situations in my own companies before where where maybe that hasn't worked out so well, and but I always overrode that with like, okay, well, it's fine, if it breaks, we can always figure something else out. Like I think I applied the same thing to basically selling everything and moving overseas for a couple of years. Like if it doesn't work out, we'll try something else. So I think I probably have a little bit less fear of failure than some others in that space, and that allows me to step into that. But I am still very risk averse, and I've gotten I wouldn't say more risk averse, but more calculated. So where there's potential risks, always want to make sure that we've got a backup plan, or that we're making sure we're covering it, and things like that. Because you have to. I mean, when you I feel like when you're building the business, especially when there's multiple team members involved and so on and so forth, like you've got a responsibility to look after the business. Because when I was on my own, it's just me. I'm the business. It doesn't really matter. Like at the end of the day, it's only me that it affects, right? If something breaks.
Mm.
But if I take a chance when we've got a whole team, we've got a responsibility to look after the team and make sure that we've got a responsible business. And so I've gotten a lot better at balancing that over the years. But I don't think that fear ever really goes away. It's just more overshadowed by, where you're trying to get to. And like I said, I think the probably for me the biggest takeaway is really to understand that fear and leverage it to manage your risk.
Mm, I love it. Understanding the fear. And when you look back where you are in your career currently, and you just look over your career span, obviously it's not over, it's still going to go for like, years and years. But is there a moment in your career where you just look back and you're like, wow, like I've done something, like, or a moment that just like blew you away or like paused you a second?
Yeah, actually, I think that really hit me probably. If I actually think about when I was in Cape Town, I spent some time in Cape Town last year I think it must have been April, and we'd just come through our sort of January strategy and planning and whatever one of our biggest summits we have ever held, and we're sitting back looking at our results of the previous year and our quarterly results and so on. And I was actually working with a coach at the time, and I said to her, like, one of the challenges I've got is I feel like I'm like this is happening and like I'm here, and it's almost like it's not real, like it's not me. And it was like this big aha moment, like, oh wow, like I've actually managed to do something here, and like this is like I've done a lot here, and we've actually accomplished something big. Um, and I think that's probably one of the biggest moments was that last year around probably around April or so. And yeah, it was a big moment. Like I like, oh wow, because I think you get lost up or get a bit caught up in the doing, and I think we can all suffer from this a lot. Like you just kind of get stuck in and you get stuff done, and it's really good. I think last year we had really strong, and we've got that intention again this year is to where are we going, and then you've got this sort of mentioned earlier, like your North Star, your guiding vision, like, okay, cool, that's what we're building. And then I got really stuck into actually making that happen. And I think you've really got to take time to just step back and acknowledge where you've got to. Um, that's been a big learning curve for me as well, I think, is just taking the time to acknowledge that and step back and say, okay, cool, actually we've done really well. Like we've done all these different things, and I've managed to accomplish quite a few things that I've wanted to do. And often like I say, we get caught up in the doing, and we don't necessarily take the time. I'm speaking for myself here. Maybe this connects with other people, but where you don't necessarily take the time to step back and just appreciate that. And I feel like I've got to catch myself, and I'm getting better at this. But I've got to catch myself around, setting the bar like really high, and then getting frustrated sometimes when we're not meeting it, or when I'm not meeting it myself, but then to just acknowledge like that it's a high bar to set, and that even so we've managed to accomplish stuff. And yeah, really for me that moment really hit home, like I said, last year in about April, when I actually just had stepped back, say working with a coach, and she actually got me to like draw a circle for like what's happened in my role and my position and what I'm doing, and just sort of put on the paper, like physically draw a circle and then put on paper where do I see myself. And actually I put a dot like quite well outside that circle, like wasn't fully connected. You know what I mean? Like I didn't see myself in that space, and it was just a big eye-opening moment. And it was like I just actually just took a weekend. I think I went to got a bottle of champagne and just like celebrate and appreciate the moment. Like, okay, we've done this, and just appreciate that and really take it in, because you've got to acknowledge it. I think it's tough to do sometimes. Certainly for me, it's been an interesting learning curve.
Oh, I love that you shared that story with all the vulnerability. And I think it's true. I think a lot of people, we get so caught up in the attainment of something, especially with high achievers, I find that they set the bar so high that no matter what they're getting along that journey, it almost never measures up, because it's like, but I'm still not there yet. And the truth is, we've heard it so many times, right? The joy is in the journey. It's not in the destination, it's in how you get there. And I know you said you're becoming more conscientious and conscious of being aware of where you are in your journey. So I want to know, do you have any routines and structures that you have in your life that keep you balanced at this time?
So this is an interesting one. I think Yeah, so Candace, you know, like a lot of people talk about their morning routines and their specific structures, and you'll know, like we see this a lot if you go and follow anything on Instagram or motivational stuff. Like there's, you must do this, this, and this for morning routines, and like I've tried to do that. I don't know how many times, and I really battle to have a fixed routine. And so I was actually doing something. We got a process to do. I think it's called a Colby profile. So it's all about your how you approach or how you react, or how do you take action. It's really about how do you take action. And one of the things that reading through the profile was quite interesting is that, like, one of the things I shouldn't be doing is, where my energy profile and everything is, having a very strict routine. And I find there was like quite a like eye-opening moment, because I was like, oh wow, like that's so true. Like whenever I've tried to have a very strict routine for myself, I can do it for like a couple of days and then I start falling off. So what I've actually started doing now is I've got a routine, and I mean this sounds a little bit of a paradox or oxymoron. Like I've got a bit of a routine, but it's flexible. So I know like my routine is I've got to get up in the morning, I've got to do my workout, right? But I'm not going to try and do it at 5 a.m. every day or 6 a.m. or whatever. That's just not going to work, because what happens for me then is I'll wake up at, like, I don't know, 5 to 6 or 10 past 6. I'm like, oh, I've overslept, or like, and then my whole routine's derailed. Whereas rather I've got that flexibility to say, okay, well, cool, so what? I've woken up a little bit earlier or a little bit later, take my time, get up, go and do my workout. And it doesn't really matter what time it is, if that makes sense. So it's still got a routine, but it's a bit more flexible. And so what I've tried to do is, I'm actually reading a book at the moment. It's sort of the Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs, and it's really interesting around the approach to making sure that you do a bit of meditation or quiet time, do some reading, do your affirmations, that kind of thing. Just have a very clear plan for what your day is. And again, like I try and do most of those, but I try to be a lot easier on myself if I don't, because when I'm really strict about trying to stick to a routine, then I tend to fall off the rails a bit. So yeah, that's kind of my routine. But I know, like, for the moment, I've got to get my workouts in, so I get my energy and my training in, and then making sure that I set my day up so in such a way that I can have a productive day and make sure I get the most important things done.
Well, I actually love, love, love that you just shared that, because I think a lot of people put themselves under so much pressure to follow every tip that they hear, right? And as you said, it's very predominant to have, like, you have to have a structured morning routine and you have to do this in the evenings. And this is the ritual you have to follow at exactly 12 p.m., And the truth is, a lot of people sometimes just don't resonate with it. And then they spend so much time being upset with themselves that they're not sticking to this, that they never actually get around to doing it. So I love that. And I love that you shared it. And I think a big takeaway that I got from that is figure out what works for you. Like there's so much advice out there, there's so many philosophies. Find something in a system that makes you the best at what you can be. And I've got to be honest with you, Stephen, having worked with you for almost a year now, that is not what I thought you'd say. I thought you were one of the most structured, like, 5 a.m. military time, you are up, you're running by 6, you're on your laptop.
Yeah, not at all.
I love that. I actually really love that. And you mentioned training. Do you want to tell people what exactly you've decided to do and what you're training for?
Yeah, so I'm quite excited about this. I mean, it's not far away. I think it's 41 days to go. So I'm training to go up to do Everest Base Camp. And yeah, so it's quite an interesting idea, because I've never really got any experience trekking or anything like this, and here I'm off to take on quite a big adventure. Um, I'm getting excited for it, but it's also like, I'm starting to make sure that I get my training in, and I'm committed to doing that, because I don't want to go unprepared. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this adventure. Yeah, 41 days to go. It's really coming up soon, and flights are booked. The adventure's booked. Everything's real. I've still got to get some gear and get all prepped for this, but I think it's going to be an adventure of a lifetime, trekking up to Everest Base Camp.
But tell me, Stephen, I mean, you're at a place in your life where you've got the freedom to do whatever you want to do, go wherever you want to go. What was it about Everest that made you like, that's the thing I want to go do right now? you know?
Yeah, I don't know. So I blame Lisa. So, as you guys might know, Lisa Gehring, she works with us and she's the head of people, and she's got an affinity for climbing mountains. And she sort of planted the seed of why don't I come join her? And honestly, it's not something I would have necessarily done on my own or at my own adventure. If I was choosing where to go or what to do, like it would not have even been on the list, I don't think. Um, but she mentioned it, and I started thinking about it, and I was like, actually, you know what? One of the things I've noticed, and this is part of my development, I think, is just becoming a lot more self-aware. And what I noticed is when I'd done some road trips, fortunate to have spent some time in France and driving through the Pyrenees Mountains and just spending time out in nature in the mountains specifically, I was like, actually, you know what? I really enjoy being in the mountains. I really enjoy those landscapes. I really enjoy that sort of environment. And so when Lisa dropped the seed, I really started like almost immediately. I just went quiet. Like I don't think I told anyone what I was thinking or whatever. But for a couple of weeks, I was like very seriously contemplating. I'm like, actually, you know what? If I enjoy being in that environment in the mountains, like what better place than to go and do Everest Base Camp? I don't really have any affinity or any sort of calling to go and climb the summit. Like that's not my comfort zone at all. But certainly tracking up to be in the mountains and be in that environment, it actually was quite appealing. And I thought, you know what, it lines up perfectly to go and do it with somebody I know who Lisa's doing it. She's doing it with a team that she trusts. I can kind of piggyback on all of that because I feel like it's a kind of adventure that you want to make sure you do properly. You don't just wing it. And so I think everything kind of lined up, and I thought, well, why not? Let's give it a shot. And just go and experience it. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned having the freedom to be able to do this kind of stuff. Like, I'm super grateful that I'm in the position where I can do that. And it's going to be interesting having a couple of us away from work for. I think I'm going to be gone for nearly 4 weeks. Um, I don't know who that's going to stress out more, probably me. Then the team might be a bit of freedom. I don't know, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, I'm so grateful for the fact that we've managed to build a business and a team, this phenomenal team, that I can afford to take some time out and go and do that and cram all my leave for the year into one little space, and be away for 4 weeks. I think it's going to be incredible.
Oh, but I also don't want us to overlook the fact that it is still a dangerous thing to do. This is not like, me climbing Table Mountain in my backyard. You know what I'm saying? I don't need to train to go climb Table Mountain. You need to train to climb Everest. So is there anything in your mind like that is also taken into account, like the dangers that come with climbing Everest?
Well, so like I said, like I'm not really interested in doing the summit because to me that's dangerous. Like I don't like there's risk involved for that for sure. I I mean, you say that I don't necessarily feel that base camp is dangerous. Like there's things you need to be careful of, and I think there's, if you rush it, like there's altitude sickness and whatever. If you rush it and if you don't do things properly, which is why I fully agree with taking the opportunity now and doing it with a team that knows how to run these kinds of expeditions, because they can, I think it kind of goes with everything, right? So whether it's in personal life or in business, whatever, like going with the right guide, having the right, like a Sherpa, literally like guiding you along the process, somebody who knows what they're doing, somebody who knows what danger or warning signs to look for if you're not doing well. And so, I'm pretty at ease around that. I don't necessarily feel that there's particular danger in this. I think the thing that's probably weighing most on my mind is two things really. Is like, am I fit enough? Like, because if you go up halfway up a mountain and you realize like I'm not fit enough to do this, you're going to be in a bit of trouble. I don't think base camp's too demanding in that respect, but I don't know. I haven't done it, so I'm trying to make sure that I do everything I can to prepare for that. And the other one is just having the right gear. And so if you've got the right equipment, you've got the right team with you, and you've prepared as best you can, I think it's going to be fine. So and I reckon that's the approach you should take to everything, right? Whether that's in business or personal life, if you can get those things right, I guess you'll be okay. And then just enjoy the journey.
Oh, I love that. It is so metaphorical. And based on our interview, it actually sounds like it lines up so perfectly with where you are in your life and where you are in your journey, which is incredible. And, you mentioned while you were talking about, training, and you just mentioned, it is so important to have the right person, the right team. And I almost want to ask you, is that what drew you into the personal development field? Because I mean, the company that you are running is self-development, right? We get the best teachers from around the world. And so what drew you into the space?
Yeah, Candice, I think it's exactly that. What actually happened is, so I was running my own company, a software development agency, and through a series of changes and whatnot, I ended up running it on my own with basically I had to let the team go, and we ended up, it was basically just me, and I was trying to rebuild it from scratch almost. And I was kind of battling, and for a long time I was trying to do it everything myself. And I started to hear more, and like I started researching, like, okay, what am I doing wrong here? Because things aren't quite working out. I'm not quite getting there. And I think what happened is, somewhere along the line, I came across this, yeah, a post or something. I can't remember what it was, but it was this, like, you need the right mentor. I was like, okay, well, how do I find a mentor? Like, who's going to be a mentor? And I think it was just pure dumb luck or chance or the universe. I don't know what, but my wife actually found an ad for one of Brian Walsh's events. And I think it was one of the big free real success events. I'm talking like, I can't remember what it was. It was like back in 2012 or 2011. It was many years ago. And it was an ad, never heard of this guy, Brian, don't know what it's all about. And his ad was it was him doing a video saying, listen, if you feel like you're stuck, come to this free event and, listen to these brilliant teachers and they can help you on something along those lines. I was like, hey, I don't know who this is. I don't know what this is all about, but it's like, I'm looking for a mentor. I don't know how to find it. Like, let's just go to this event. And yeah, I think that was like the start of it, because I hadn't really been much into the personal development. I think I'd learned a lot, and I'd done a lot of research around my specific work. How do I build, like if I'm building software, or if I'm building I think it was managed IT services I was looking at as well. Like, I was getting a lot of resources from a technical point of view, from the doing and the technician side of the job, but not so much in my own personal development. And so I went along to this event, and it just clicked, like this is the space I need to be in, because I think I learned so much in that. I think it was a 2 day or 3 day event over a weekend, and I ended up just getting more and more into this journey. And I think I turned into one of the one of the biggest clients of the company back then. I bought so many different programs. I don't even know how I paid for it. Like, my business was really battling at the time, and like and somehow I managed to end the year having not lost any money, but having spent quite a lot on training. So obviously I was doing something that the training was turning into financial results. I could actually afford to do it. And it kind of snowballed from there. Like, I ended up being on, when Brian launched his elite coaching, I applied for it. I had no idea how I was going to afford it. I ended up applying for it. We worked something out. And it just kind of progressed from there. And I realized that, and like I say, I ended up on that 2 day MBA with Brian Tracy, and it's like that, it really sticks with me. Like, you don't know what you don't know, and this is why you need mentors, and you need guides, you need people who have done it before. Whether that's like, and I think you need a combination of mentors and coaches. I think people don't always understand the difference between a mentor and a coach. And for me, like, a coach is somebody who can hold you accountable and get stuff done, and take that action, hold you accountable to follow through on stuff. Whereas a mentor is somebody who's done it before, and they've got the wisdom and the knowledge, and they can share that with you. And I ended up getting both. Like, I was actually working with Lisa as a coach. She was holding me accountable to make sure I follow through on stuff. Working with Brian as a mentor. And I think Brian was joking about it the other day. Like, I took what Brian was teaching and I implemented in this business. And yeah, so I think that's kind of where it started. It was just this sort of way the universe sort of conspired to get me in front of this and get me onto this journey. And I think that's what resonates so well with me, is that, like, I've come through the journey myself, and I can see what a difference it makes. And that's why I'm, like, so inspired to help other people do the same thing. And yeah, so that's kind of where that story goes.
Oh, I actually got goosebumps as you were speaking, because the quote that came to mind was Steve Jobs' quote, where it says, you can't connect the dots looking forward, but you can only connect them looking back. And to think, when you were either in the kitchen or in the restaurant, wherever you were, when Erica found that advert for the Real Success event, you had no clue that in that moment, you were actually choosing your destiny. Like you were like
Yeah,
this was the beginning of the greatest adventure. Like, right? It blows my
so true.
mind. Blows my mind. And it's just like, oh, all the chills, all the chills. And Stephen, as you have looked over your life and you've been through this journey, I know you've mentioned Brian Tracy quite a bit, and I know Brian Walsh has had such an impact on you. But are there any lessons that really, like, as you move through life, you realize that these are the predominant lessons that have stood out from different teachers for you?
I think, yeah, I mean, it's so interesting, Candice, because there's so many different, I mean, obviously in this space, we work with so many different brilliant teachers. Um, and sometimes because we work with so many of, like, I kind of forget sometimes who said what. It's an interesting space to be in, and there's so many like standout moments. I think there's, a couple of key things for me is, like I mentioned earlier, like that action brings clarity. Um, you've got to if you don't know what to do, you've got to take that first step and start moving. But one of the really big standouts for me as well has been Dr. John DeMartini and values. I think that's been like a huge thing for me, and I'm actually like starting to apply some of it again now. Like I think we get a little bit off track, and we've got to sort of come back to these things. So for me, I remember doing my values. Yeah, many years ago when I first started, like I mentioned, I started the lead coaching with Brian back in the day, a couple of years back. And the first exercise he took us through was values. And out of that exercise, they've changed a little bit now, but it was business success came out top. That was like running and owning and building a successful business and helping others to do the same. Um, Travel was a big one for me, and cars. And I think somewhere in the top few was coffee and a couple other things. It was quite an interesting mix. It was like really interesting. Um, and so it's really interesting to get clarity on that. And I think that's probably been one of the biggest standout things is, and it's okay. Like for me, a strange one for me at the time was that family wasn't on that list. And it was like, whoa, like why? Like, am I doing something wrong? Like, and it's not necessarily the case. I think it comes from understanding where there's a lack. So for me, there was a lack of or a void maybe in terms of my own personal development, wanting to be successful in some way and finding that through business. And for things like I say, cars was on there. I just love cars. It's like cool. So it's okay. So I think it needs to be, and it is different for everyone. Everyone's got different values. Everyone's got different priorities of them. Some of them are, for me, there was quite a big standout one around business, and cars and travel was quite a far second. But I've definitely noticed that that's where, like my happy space almost is definitely with cars. Which has been an interesting one because while I was traveling, like we lived in France for 3.5 years, and so we sold everything before we left, and I didn't own a car for 3.5 years, and I'd owned like quite a bunch of cars before that, and so it was a bit of a strange one, and it didn't really matter because I think at the time I was fulfilling those values through travel and working really hard in the business, and then come back now, like I'm not traveling much at the moment. I spend a bit of time in Cape Town, but I'm mostly up in Johannesburg at the moment, and so I think cars has really crept back up that list. And so last week I went and did some racing with a driving academy, and I think it was fantastic. Like I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it just reminded me like that's one of my values. And if you can do stuff that serves your values, if you can do stuff that have a bit of fun, um, I think that's important. And so that's probably one of the biggest standout lessons I've learned through this whole personal development. But along the way, I think another critical area of that is just being self-aware, to know, what makes you happy, what doesn't, what works well for you. Like I mentioned, morning routines, like being aware of what works for you and what doesn't, and being aware of where you're lacking in skills or you need to find help or whatever. Like I think that combined with values is probably the two biggest takeaways for me so far if I look back on things.
No, I love that. And I think the most interesting thing about values is, and I think a lot of people fall into that. I fell into the trap of thinking that, but I know what my values are. So before I did the values facts, I was like, but I know what I value. I don't need to do this exercise. I almost actually said to Lisa, I was like, No, don't worry. I know. I mean, imagine my arrogance. I'm like, I know what they are. Like, I don't need to sit down for an hour and do this. And so I did it. And, my values, I was like, huh. I mean, the top one made a lot of sense, which was large impact. Like, I need to be in front of people. I need to do. So that made a lot of sense. I was like, yeah, I could have told you that. But then the second and third, I was like, huh, no, I would have never said. So I love that. I love like taking what you think, which is the personal development field, right? A lot of people can think they know the knowledge, but until you implement it, it's just useless. Um,
Yeah.
Stephen, you mentioned a few things as you were sharing, and the one thing that stuck out to me is, when you said you went racing, is how have you integrated like a balance in your life? Because building a multi-million-dollar company is a lot of work and it consumes a lot of time. And as you mentioned earlier in the interview, you are someone who likes getting things done. So how have you managed to actually integrate some sort of balance into your life?
That's a good one. I think that I haven't. No, no, I'm working on it, right? So I have definitely been far more. A lot of people might use workaholic as a term. I love my work, so for me, it's not. It's never been an issue, right? For as long as I can remember, I've worked really long hours. I've worked hard. I'm not scared of that at all. I enjoy it. Like I enjoy the work I do like 99% of the time, right? I think so for me, it's not really been an issue to have that balance per se. Like, but there's been a couple of key things that I've learned, and certainly over probably the last 6 months, even more so, is that in order for me to do that, I've got an incredibly supportive wife, and she basically helps me do a lot of that. So she takes care of a lot of other stuff, so I can work and do that. And I think we've got a good separation there in terms of where the different roles we play. And I think that I wouldn't be able to do that without her and supporting me in that way. And I think so for me that, like I said, the work doesn't scare me, and I can do spend a lot of hours there. That being said, um, it working with another brilliant coach over the last few months has been one of the things that it's been made quite clear is that I need to go out and have some fun. I can't just work all the time, right? And um, and it's interesting because like I never really thought of it that way. Like I would do some stuff from time to time. I would have fun, but maybe not as much, and maybe probably put work first. And so it's definitely a case of, I think I'm really grateful for being in a space where I've been able to take a bit more time out and being able to build the team and build the organization so that it's not reliant on me for sure. Like we've got a whole team that can run stuff. Um, and so for me, it feels like it's taken a while to get to that space. If I consider coming from my previous company where I did a lot of the stuff myself, and and this is very applicable to I think a lot of entrepreneurs starting out, is that we tend to almost create a job for ourselves, right, instead of building a business. And so to be able to make that switch and start building a business and delegating stuff and being able to get, whether that's just a virtual assistant for an hour a day or whatever it might be, you got to start offloading stuff and build a business and a system that can do things for you instead of you being the business. And a lot of people get stuck in that process where I think the term is like you're the technician, you're doing the work. And so for me, I've been very grateful that I can sort of start stepping away from that and rather leading the business and leading the operations and leading the what needs to be done rather than doing it all myself. And so that's been a critical part of that. But it's definitely like I feel there's, like I said, that balance always hasn't always been there because I enjoy my work. But stepping away, having some fun, doing some other stuff allows you to come back in a way that's more recharged. So I can come back to where I can go racing for a day and come back with having spent some time away from work, thoughts are clearer, vision is clearer, like what needs to get done, and just sort of reevaluate what your priorities are. And I think that's really important. And I think anyone in the leadership space needs to be able to do this, is to be able to take time out and switch off so that you don't get stuck in the doing. And so that you can help your team, you can help your business and put in the systems and structures to help grow things rather than just getting stuck in the busy work. And yeah, so that's been made abundantly clear to me over the last few months, and I'm like physically trying to make that happen now. So, and it helps. It definitely helps.
Oh, that is incredible. And, I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle, or people who are trying, in their own paths, because it's a control thing, right? You're so afraid that if you relinquish control, that nothing's going to work or everything's going to fall apart and you're going to turn back and it's going to be like, oh no, everything I've built. How much of it has been about control for you, Stephen?
Yeah, probably a good portion of it. I think there's, as you say, like I think a lot of entrepreneurs maybe struggle with this, and it's probably the single biggest reason the business stays small is because you can't let go of control, and it comes from, I don't know, probably like, and probably a misguided belief where it's like, me as an entrepreneur, I think I can do things better, right? Or if it's not done my way, it's not done right. Or, there's a whole lot of belief systems around that, right? And it's hard to sometimes break through that in it, but I think it is probably one of the biggest limiting factors. And like, I still get caught up with it, right? I still often get stuck in the doing because like, I've got a task and I need to get it done. And I'm like, I'm going to delegate this or outsource it or something. And I'm like, it's going to take so long to draw up a requirement or a document on how I want things done, or to explain it. I might as well just do it myself. And that's the wrong thinking. And I've got to catch myself. I've got to, like, I still get stuck with it, but I've got to catch myself around that, because that's not how you build a business. It's not how you build a team. Um, you've got to be able to effectively delegate and offload stuff so that you can focus on where you add the most value. And so interestingly, through there's I think it's called activity inventory. One of the documents or processes we've been working on is where you can try and figure out all the stuff you do in a day. And when you literally write down, okay, I've done this, I've checked my email, I've responded to a meeting invite, did a Zoom interview, whatever it might be, like, put down a value to that, and put down firstly, whether or not you're competent at it. So can you actually do the job? And then also whether or not you're the only one who can do it. And if you're not the only one who can do it, like, then see if you can outsource it. Like, if it's not your highest value work, and it's not where your unique skill set is, you need to try and offload it. Now, that's not always practical. So I mean, I can't just offload everything because we don't necessarily have the team, we don't necessarily have the outsource. So um, you got to be sort of logical about it, and pursue it, but you've got to keep doing it. And the more you can do that, the more you can step into your most valuable contribution to the business, and you can start building a team and building that business. I think it's so difficult to do that because that mental shift from letting go of control. Um, but I think one of the ways to get around that, I think, is what really resonated for me a while back, was understanding that me as a business leader, like, I've got to surround myself with people who can do the job better than me. In other words, if I want to offload something, like, I'm going to offload something to you, Candice. I know you're going to do it better than I can, and this is why I'm giving it to you to do. And so I can help. My job is to, like, work with Brian or the CEO to take the vision, turn it into an operational plan, and then give that work to people who will do it the best. And so you've got to get into that mindset, and it doesn't happen overnight. And you've got to have performance management to make sure that you're giving people the right tools, the right resources, measuring the results, working with them, coaching them, etc. So it's not an easy process, but I think that's the critical way in how you really build a team and build a business.
Oh, I love that. And it's so practical for people to start thinking around. Stephen, as we're coming to the end of the interview, if I gave you a time machine, and this time machine took you into the future, took you like 10 years into the future, and you came back and you're looking back, what would you have done in the 10 years? Like, what do you envision yourself doing and creating in the next 10 years?
So that's a tricky one, I think. Honestly, I think it would be having fulfilled the vision so Brian set out the vision around Real Success Network and what the business must achieve, and our business is connect 1 million people in a learning journey on a global basis. And so for me, looking back in 10 years time, is like, I would have wanted to achieve that. That I don't know how we're going to get there. We've got a long way to go and a long way to grow to get there, but that is really what I would want to have achieved. Because I think if we can do that, if we connect people on a learning journey, like, I think from my own experience, I was on some learning journey, and it's made an impact in my life, and I think it's made an impact on the people around me. And if we can do the same for 1 million people around the world, the knock-on effect is going to be huge, and it's going to change people's lives for the better and give them opportunities they never thought they could take. And I think, yeah, if I look back, let's say 10 years from now, that's what I would have wanted to achieve.
Oh, I love that. No, no mountains, no more mountains. No.
There might be a couple of mountains and some racetracks and some other adventures and lots of travel in between for sure. Um, Definitely.
Oh, I love that. And now we're coming into the final portion of the interview, which is I want to know for you on a personal level, what is real success to you?
I think it can be, so for me, yeah, because it can be so different to everyone, I think it's important to have your own definition. Absolutely. So for me, real success is it borders on a few different things. And I mean, like this is maybe going to sound a little bit repetitive because of the business we because I've been involved in the space for so long. But it's wealth, meaning, and freedom. It's being able to be financially free, financially secure, so that you don't have to worry about the money. It's the freedom to do what you enjoy, to take time out, to spend time with people you love, and to really have that freedom. And I think also freedom of choice, right? So to have options. Um, and meaning is to get value out of everything, or to get meaningful value out of the work that you do and the impact that you can make. And that can happen in so many different ways, but for me, it's critical that to me, those three components together is real success. And yeah, like it's critical that you have to have all three. It's not one is more important than the other. So like you can never put money before freedom, or before whatever, but you can't also put freedom above money because it doesn't work.
Mm.
You have all the time in the world to do whatever you want, but you can't afford to do anything. You're worrying about paying the bills. So I think they're all equally important. And yeah, real success for me is firstly knowing what that means to you, knowing what each of those areas mean for you. What does it mean to be financially free? What is that number? What does it look like? What does freedom mean to you? Does it mean like because it could mean, I don't know, living on a yacht and not never having to go to office? It could be being able to go and climb mountains. It could be just in your office or working with your team. Like that it depends what it means for you. And then yeah, the meaning is like what are your values and how do you serve them best? And what is for some people that's doing a brilliant job at work. For some people, it's been out there building businesses. It varies. But for me, is like real success is understanding what each of those are and then living true to those.
Oh, and I love the fact that you say that people need to be, very specific about what that looks like, because it's one thing to hear, that in me it's meaning, wealth, and freedom. But if you don't know the number, what is that number for you? Because you could chase it for the rest of your life if you don't know what you're chasing. And the same with, meaning and freedom. So I love that advice. I think it's so crucial. Just for you, Stephen, because you did mention this. You said you had a love for cars. So in your ideal world, what does your like car garage look like? Like which cars have to be featured in the collection of Stephen Fourie?
Well, this changes so often, but yeah, I mean, I've always had this. I think I've had this, this dream of one day owning, which is a bit weird because it doesn't quite work with my travel goals, but is to own this nice house with a garage that I've got multiple cars parked there. There's definitely got to be a Mercedes AMG. I'm definitely getting hooked on Porsche, so there's got to be a Porsche there somewhere. Um, yeah, I don't know, like it changes often, and I think I'll want a couple of classics in there, like a good old Toyota Supra and a good Subaru WRX. I think there's got to be some fun cars. They got to have character.
I love that. All the car people were like celebrating as you were answering. I love it. I'm just sad that BMW didn't make it into the list. No, no BMW.
I wouldn't mind, to be honest. Like I say, it was interesting. I think I had the question the other day, like, oh, well, what about this brand or what is this? And I just love cars. Like I've driven so many. I was quite fortunate in growing up, and while my mom worked with a car dealer, and she would drive something different almost every day, and I would, she'd let me take them for a drive and whatnot. So I've got like this joy of having driven so many different types of cars, and they've all got their own character. And I think for me, I can enjoy any of them. It all really just depends on the time, the environment, what you want to do with it. But I've got no like major affinity for brands, except I do like Mercedes. I've always liked Mercedes. But yeah, I could enjoy a good BMW M car. They're loads of fun.
I love that. And then our final question for this interview, Stephen. What is something about you that we will not find on Google?
Interesting. I don't know. I don't know if you'll actually find much about me on Google, to be honest. um, I don't know. That's a good question. I think, yeah, so firstly, just the my interest in travel and adventure, I think, is maybe not very apparent, and just the actual love of experiencing other cultures. When you go and travel to live somewhere, but live like a local, and just to experience how people do different things in different parts of the world, it's so eye opening. And I think yeah, you're not really going to find that on, I suppose it's personality trait. You're not going to find that on Google. And yeah, I just absolutely love it. And I think it's so eye opening. You can learn so much from other people, and just having that open mind and being able to experience different cultures for what they are. And yeah.
Oh, I love that answer. And bonus question and final question. Which culture has influenced you the most?
Um, I'd say probably the French culture, honestly. Like, I mean, it's probably because I've spent 3.5 years living there. I think just the way of life has was quite different to everything else I've seen. It's like the enjoyment of life and just living in the moment. I think is so powerful, actually. And I don't know if the French people realize this, but like it's so different in other parts of the world. Like coming from South Africa, especially Johannesburg, where there's so much, it's work, 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 whatever, and living in France, where you've got, you take the time out in the long summer evenings, just go and sit down by the river, take a bottle of wine and a couple of baguettes, and you just sit and have a just a bit of time at the river with friends, just to enjoy that the company and the sunshine while it lasts, like just living in the moment. And I think it's so powerful to actually understand that and do that and just appreciate just the time we have while we can.
Well, I guess that's my next travel destination. Oui, France, here I come. Stephen, this interview has been amazing. Thank you so much for spending time with us on the Real Success Show.
Thanks so much, Candice. It's been really good to be here.
I loved that interview. As usual, be sure to share with us what stood out for you so that we can get guests that make you feel stimulated and that inspire you. As usual, it has been an honor and a privilege to serve you this week, and I look forward to doing it again next week.